A dented metal box sat half buried in the sand behind a coastal gas station, salt-crusted and humming faintly. The latch, fused shut by years of salt, shuddered as a sudden breath of wind pried it open, revealing something that twitched beneath black velvet, too warm to be metal, too still to be alive. The velvet lifted with a smell of rust and brine, curling like a living tongue. A single bloodshot eye opened and blinked at the sky. Lonnie Deeks thought it was trash. But today, the box noticed him. For weeks, he'd walked past it. Just a salt-bleached lump half buried in sand behind the old Sinclair station near the coast highway. He'd figured it was a rusted battery or maybe a busted toolbox. And like most things the ocean spit out, it was better left alone. But today, the box felt different. He noticed it before he even rounded the corner, felt it, really. Like a pressure behind his ribs. The air buzzed louder here. That humming again. Higher than a motor, lower than a whistle. The shadow it cast stretched longer than the angle of the morning sun should have allowed. His feet slowed. Still here, he muttered, forcing a chuckle. He wasn't laughing. The wind shifted, and the smell hit him, brine, but sharp and sour underneath. Like meat gone off in the sun. He stopped 4 feet from it. His palms were sweating. Not from heat. His body knew something his brain didn't. Every instinct screamed to keep walking. Lonnie Deeks had hauled freight across 6 states, faced black ice and brake failures, stared down drunks in dark parking lots. He didn't scare easy. But this? This was something else. The box's surface was blistered metal, pitted with green-black corrosion. On its front, a rusted latch curled tightly shut like a clenched jaw. The velvet lining peeked from the edges, so black it looked wet. And it hummed. The vibrations traveled through the air into his bones. The pitch never changed, but it felt alive, as if it adjusted to his heartbeat. His teeth hurt. His stomach curled in on itself. He turned to go, then froze. Behind the box, the sand was torn in a strange fan-shaped pattern. Claw marks. 4 of them. Deep, parallel gouges etched into the shore, each nearly 2 feet long. And they were fresh. Lonnie's breath caught in his throat. The claw marks didn't just end, they pointed toward the station. Toward town. He swallowed and stepped forward, reaching out with one hesitant hand. The metal was warm. Not sun-warm. Not like iron left out in summer. No, this was flesh-warm. Fever-warm. Like it had its own temperature, and it was rising. He touched the latch. It didn't resist. It vibrated under his fingers, subtle but rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. Lonnie pulled his hand back, heart pounding in sync with that buried pulse. They didn't just joke about this place, he remembered Burke saying once. They swore the shadows behind the station moved when no one was there. He hadn't believed it. He wasn't so sure now. The wind kicked up suddenly, scattering sand across his boots. It swept over the box, and the velvet rustled faintly, though the lid hadn't moved. He took another step back. That's when he saw it. The claw marks had deepened while he stood there. The sand shifted just slightly, revealing another inch of gouge. They hadn't been made before he arrived. They were being made now. The box had left deep claw marks in the sand, pointing toward town. Boxes don't breathe, but this one did. Lonnie carried it home against every better instinct. He wrapped it in an old flannel shirt and shoved it in the back of his truck, eyes darting every time the box pulsed against the floorboard like it didn't like being moved. The ride back to his trailer felt longer than usual, the road winding strangely, as if it stretched just to keep him inside the cab longer. Once home, he set it on the counter and stared. It didn't hum now. It pulsed. He reached for it. Just to check. Just to be sure he hadn't imagined it. The moment his hand brushed the lid, a thin puff of black dust hissed out from the edges, like air escaping a dying lung. Lonnie staggered back, choking. His throat burned. Metallic ash coated his tongue. His vision split for half a second, like two versions of the room overlapped. One with him. One, without. He coughed into the sink until he could breathe again, blinking hard to clear the haze. When he turned around, the box was open. He hadn't opened it. Inside, resting atop the now-twitching velvet, was a single object, a cassette tape. Old school, labeled with a strip of yellowed masking tape. Black marker scrawled across it. "Play me if it escapes." He stared at it, unmoving. The words shouldn't mean anything. But they did. A whisper of wind brushed through the kitchen, though all windows were closed. The tape flipped itself. Clicked. The machine on his counter, his old cassette player, last used a decade ago, came to life without his touch. Static crackled. Then a man's voice came through, calm, clinical, like a dentist reading instructions from a manual. "If you're hearing this, containment has failed. It means the seal has cracked. It means the vessel is awake." Lonnie's knees gave slightly, and he leaned on the counter for balance. "You must not bring it to water. Do not attempt to destroy the vessel. Do not remove the inner chamber. It remembers the last name spoken in its presence." Lonnie reached out to stop the tape. But his hand froze. The voice on the tape changed. It shifted from clinical to something else, soft, familiar. Deep southern vowels. A voice he hadn't heard in years. His wife's. "Lonnie," it said. "You shouldn't have opened it." He snatched the tape out of the player. The voice cut off mid-syllable. The player kept spinning anyway. The tape wasn't even in it. That's when he noticed the velvet. It was moving. Rising. Falling. Subtly. Rhythmic. Breathing. He stepped back, heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted out. His skin felt too tight. The walls too close. The lights flickered once. Just once. The velvet lifted slightly, just a ripple. He couldn't look away. That's when he saw it, something small and sharp glinting in the corner. Tucked where the velvet met metal. Not part of the casing. Not a component. A tooth. Old. Brown. Human. The cassette's voice had warned him, but it wasn't the first time the box had been opened. Would you keep testing, or walk away? The tape warned him to stay away, but the knocking came anyway. Lonnie couldn't sleep. He had pushed the box into the shed behind his trailer, wrapped it in a plastic tarp, and wedged a cinder block on top. That should have been the end of it. But all night, he felt like something was breathing just outside the door. At 3:33 a.m., 3 deliberate knocks struck his bedroom window. Not a branch. Not wind. Knock. 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 He shot upright. The old house creaked, but no footsteps followed. He grabbed the flashlight from his nightstand and flung the curtains open. No one. But seaweed was clinging to the windowpane. Not dried. Still wet. Dripping. He ran to the front door, threw it open, and froze. Seaweed on the porch. A dark clump soaked into the welcome mat. Thick strands, tangled and briny, smelling like a rotted pier. His eyes watered. The ocean was nearly 5 miles away. He followed the trail to the edge of the trailer and stopped. Nothing. But the stench lingered. It curled into the vents, seeped into the rugs. The house reeked like the deep bay. By sunrise, he was back in the shed. The box hadn't moved. The cinder block was still resting on top, but the tarp had slipped. The velvet lining had soaked through the plastic. Moisture gathered around its base. Lonnie didn't want to touch it again. He did anyway. He slid the cinder block aside and peeled the velvet open. His hand trembled as he pressed into the inner lining, searching for that second layer he'd felt before. The material twitched, quivering under his finger like raw muscle. This time, he pushed harder. The lining sank. His finger slipped beneath it, into something hollow. Warm. He recoiled. There was something inside. Not the cassette. Not air. Something, fleshy. He fumbled for his phone and dialed Burke. "I've got something you need to see," he said. Burke showed up 40 minutes later with a mug of instant coffee, a burlap sack full of broken compasses, and a revolver he barely knew how to use. He'd never taken Lonnie's story seriously, but now, his usual smirk faltered as soon as he smelled the shed. "What the hell is that?" Burke gagged. "The box," Lonnie muttered. "Smells like something died in it. I'm not sure it ever lived." Burke circled the object, squinting. "This thing looks hand-welded. But not right. Too organic. Like it grew around itself." He poked the velvet with the barrel of the revolver. It rippled. Then came the sound. Low. Vibrating. Like the box purred, only slower. Deeper. Not machine. Not animal. "You're screwing with me," Burke said, stepping back. "I wish I was." "Who made this?" Lonnie handed him the tape. Burke examined the label. His brow furrowed. He didn't laugh. "I've seen something like this before," Burke muttered. "In Vietnam. Not the box, just the noise. Heard it in a cave. We never found what made it." The box made a second noise. A whisper. Both men froze. "Did it just speak?" Burke asked. "No," Lonnie whispered. "It called." Burke backed out of the shed. "I don't want it," he said. "Get rid of it." Lonnie didn't respond. That night, the knocks came again. 3 of them. Then silence. But when Lonnie opened the front door, the tape was lying on the porch, perfectly rewound. He hadn't brought it out of the shed. The cassette played again, only now, it said a different name. Something was poisoning the bay, and not just the fish. By the weekend, the harbor reeked. Locals complained about the stench burning their noses. Fishermen dragged nets full of belly-up snapper, their insides split open as if pressure had exploded them from within. Pelicans wheeled overhead but refused to dive. Even the sea went quiet. No one knew about the box, yet. But the gossip started fast. "Must be a pipeline rupture," one man at the diner muttered. "No, no," said a woman near the window. "It's Cold War waste. My cousin said there's bunkers under the coast." "Could be biological," someone added. "You seen the fish eyes lately?" Lonnie sat in his booth, coffee gone cold in his hands, listening without speaking. Because he already knew. Back at his place, the velvet had dried and cracked. The hum had faded into a slow pulse that beat just once every 30 seconds. Waiting. Burke returned the next day, despite his own warning, dragging an old industrial drill and a toolbox behind him. "You want to know what's inside, right?" he said, avoiding Lonnie's eyes. Lonnie didn't answer. Burke set up the drill in the shed. He clamped the box, adjusted the bit, and muttered, "If this thing's mechanical, I'll cut through it in seconds." Lonnie turned away just before Burke hit the power switch. The second the bit touched metal, sparks erupted. The drill shrieked. The bit shattered like glass, scattering sharp teeth across the floor. A tiny burst of black smoke curled up from the impact point, followed by a sound. Not a scream. A hiss. The lights in the shed flickered. Burke dropped the drill, stumbling back, muttering, "That's not steel. That's not even metal." Lonnie said nothing. That night, he didn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., he woke to a soft dragging sound. Velvet on linoleum. He crept to the kitchen in bare feet. The box was gone from the shed. He found it in the bathroom. It had dragged itself across the house. Over the rug. Down the hall. Around the corner. Right to the bathtub. It stopped at the drain. Waiting. Its lid was closed. But the velvet fluttered faintly at the corners, twitching with each breath. Lonnie stepped back, heart knocking his ribs raw. Something about the drain, the water, the pipes, the dark tunnel downward, seemed to call it. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled it away. It shuddered violently, its entire body shaking like it resisted. He pushed it back into the shed, locked the door, braced it with a folding table and a barbell. Then he sat on the floor, back to the door, heart racing. Outside, the wind howled. The ocean surged louder than usual, even from miles away. The next morning, he checked the news. Fish kills up the coast. Wildlife fleeing. Some kind of unseen leak, officials baffled. Burke didn't answer his calls. The drill, the dragging, the hiss, it was all too much. And yet, Lonnie couldn't let go of the box. It didn't just move. It remembered. It chose. And it was choosing now. It didn't need water. It remembered where to go. What would you do if you found this? The box didn't just contain a secret, it remembered one. Lonnie stared at it for an hour the next morning, afraid to touch it again. The lid was still shut, the velvet now hardened into crusty folds along the edges. It looked dehydrated. Tighter. Almost like a scab. But the hum had returned. Faint. Patient. Like a pulse waiting for a vein. He grabbed gloves, a chisel, and a flashlight. If the thing was going to open again, he wouldn't let it do it on its own terms. This time, when he peeled the velvet back, it didn't resist. The first thing he saw was a child's shoe, mummified, the leather curled and brittle, no larger than his palm. Next to it, wrapped carefully in cloth that had once been white, was a single strand of hair, long, black, damp to the touch. He pulled back the cloth. There was skin on it. Scalp. His stomach turned. He dropped it, staggered back, hit the wall behind him. The box didn't react. It just breathed. He wiped his hands and tried to focus. Beneath the lining, tucked into a thin groove, he found something he'd missed, a panel along the base. Smooth and featureless. But when he pressed his thumb against it, the surface shimmered. Heat-reactive paint. The panel warmed under his skin, changing color until shapes emerged. Not just symbols. A map. Lonnie leaned closer. It showed the coastline. Dated 1973. One cove was circled in red. Coordinates handwritten beneath it in black ink. And a phrase. Deployment failed. Awaiting return. Lonnie stumbled backward again. His head swam. The pulse of the box grew louder, as if it approved. Then came the sound. Click. The tape. It was inside the player again. Lonnie hadn't moved it. He hadn't even taken it out of the shed. But now it was in his old machine, the same one that hadn't worked properly in years. It played without warning. It only answers to the name it was given. Never speak it aloud. The voice wasn't the same as before. It was closer now. Whispered, almost behind his ears rather than in front of him. Then it spoke again, calmer. Familiar. His wife's voice. Lonnie. He froze. Lonnie, you remember that lullaby I used to hum? His knees buckled. He dropped to the floor. The voice was wrong, too flat, too exact, but the rhythm, the cadence, was unmistakable. He hadn't heard it in over 8 years. Since she passed. But his body remembered. His ears filled with it. His bones ached. You shouldn't have opened it, baby. It never forgot you. Lonnie lunged forward and ripped the tape from the machine. The voice cut off. The box kept humming. A wet, thick sound echoed inside it. The shoe, the hair, those were warnings. But the message was clearer now. It had waited for him. Only him. He grabbed the map and scrawled down the coordinates. He had to see the cove. Because if it had been deployed once, and failed, then something had sent it. And something was still listening. The cadence was hers, but the voice was wrong. The box didn't come from nowhere, it came back. Lonnie followed the map early the next morning, long before the town was awake. He drove west, steering past familiar bluffs and rusted fences, until pavement gave way to gravel, then sand. The cove wasn't marked on any sign. He parked near a thicket of coastal pine and walked the rest of the way, guided by instinct more than coordinates. The air changed before he saw the water. Colder. Denser. The wind died the moment he stepped past the last tree. The cove was narrow and sunken, hidden between two stone ridges that curved like broken ribs. Tide pools dotted the inlet, but they weren't clear. They bubbled faintly, dark, thick like ink. No waves. No birds. Just the slow churn of something unseen. He approached carefully, scanning the sand for anything out of place. That's when he saw them. Teeth. Dozens of them. Embedded in a spiral on the rock wall above the shoreline. Brittle, yellowed. Not fossilized, still organic, still real. Each tooth was human-shaped but slightly wrong. Too flat. Some twisted. Some fused together. All of them looked used. And above them, etched deep into the stone, were symbols. Lonnie's blood chilled. They matched the markings from the cassette. Sharp triangles intersected by wave lines. One resembled an eye. Another, a jagged heart. He snapped photos with his phone, though the lens fogged oddly each time he tried to zoom. The spiral of teeth glistened as the tide crept in. Lonnie backed away, heart racing. The sand beneath his boots shifted, not from the waves but from underneath. Something large moved beneath the beach. He ran. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe until he reached the truck. But the dread followed him. He drove fast, heart hammering as trees blurred past. He didn't slow until asphalt returned. The world felt thin, stretched. Like the cove had followed him home, too. He pulled into his driveway and cut the engine. Silence. Then. Crunch. Sand. Footsteps. Not his. He stepped out and saw them, prints beside his own, leading from the road to his trailer door. Bare. Long-webbed slightly at the toes. He turned to the shed. Still locked. He unlocked it and yanked the door open. The box was gone. The barbell he'd placed against the door was inside, lying sideways. The tarp was shredded. Velvet fibers stuck to the floor like molted fur. He scanned the room. Empty. Then he noticed something else. The same webbed footprints, fresh and wet, led from the shed to his back steps. And into the house. Lonnie drew the revolver Burke left behind and climbed the porch. The door was cracked open. Inside, the house was still. Too still. Not quiet, waiting. He stepped through the threshold. Every clock had stopped. The second hand on the microwave. The wall clock in the hallway. Even the blinking on the old VCR had frozen. 3:33 a.m. But it wasn't morning. Outside, the sun still hung mid-sky. Inside, it was 3:33 a.m., eternally. The hum returned. Stronger now. It came from beneath the floorboards. He looked down. The linoleum pulsed slightly, as if something beneath the house breathed. Or waited. Something vast moved beneath the sand, and it had found its way inside. The box wasn't built, it was grown around something that wanted out. Lonnie tore through the house, checking every room. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No damage. No box. But the hum never left. It pulsed through the floor, through the air, through his bones. He dropped to his knees and pressed an ear to the floorboards. Thump. A beat. Like a heart. He scrambled to the basement hatch. It stuck halfway, swollen from damp. He forced it open and descended into the cool dark, each step groaning louder than the last. At the base of the stairs, his boot squelched. The basement floor was wet. The box sat in the center of the room. No tarp. No wrapping. Just exposed velvet and rusted seams, pulsing in time with the beat beneath the earth. It had opened itself. Lonnie approached slowly, revolver in one hand, flashlight in the other. The light flickered across the velvet interior, and stopped. Something was inside. Suspended in fluid, thick, amber, like syrup. Floating. A heart. Too large to be human. Lumpy. Misshapen. But undeniably alive. It throbbed once, then again, with the strength of something ancient. Each pulse rippled the fluid. Each beat pushed waves of that low hum into the air. He backed away. Nearly dropped the light. Then came the hiss. The tape. It was in the player again. No one had touched it. It began to play. The eye sees guilt. The heart remembers the name. The heart in the fluid pulsed faster. Harder. Like it recognized something. The vessel remembers. The velvet lining quivered, rising along the edges like tendrils reacting to breath. Lonnie turned and ran back up the stairs, slammed the hatch, and braced it with a chair. He called Burke. "Bring her," he said. "Now." Burke arrived 30 minutes later with a passenger, Dr. Candace Frey, a marine biologist he knew from a museum job years ago. Candace walked into the house and immediately stopped, her nostrils flaring. "Why does it smell like a trench?" she said, eyes already narrowing. Lonnie led them downstairs. When Candace saw the heart, she dropped her bag. That's not a specimen," she whispered. "That's responsive." She approached cautiously, using a UV pen to scan the fluid. The beam flickered violently. "It's not dead. It's not preserved. This thing is active. And, it's reacting to you." She reached out. The heart pulsed hard, thumping against the edge of the container. "Get away from it," Lonnie said. "It remembers names. It listens." Candace frowned. "It's not just listening. It's following." Lonnie didn't have to ask what she meant. The heart had shifted slightly. Toward the stairs. Burke took a step back. "It wants out." "No," Lonnie said. "It wants home." The house shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Pipes groaned. The chair bracing the hatch cracked. Then they heard it, dragging. The velvet lining was rising out of the box like a shroud, pulling itself over the heart. Not to cover it. To carry it. The lining slid beneath the container, lifting it like a cradle. The organ floated higher, its beats now frantic, desperate. Sloshing fluid leaked out, and the hum grew shrill. Lonnie turned to Burke. "We can't let it reach the water." But it was already moving, sliding across the floor, bumping against the stairs like it remembered each step. It didn't crawl. It remembered the path. The organ pulsed against the doorframe, sliding toward shore as if remembering. Would you reveal this to the world, or keep it secret? At 3:33 a.m., every clock in town froze. No one remembers dreaming. That's when it breached. It didn't explode or scream. It simply left. Lonnie never saw it exit. The stairs were wet when he checked. The hatch was open. The chair that had blocked it was burned at the edges, not scorched by flame, but by salt. The same kind that eats through iron after years by the sea. Outside, the town stirred to strange reports. Dogs barked wildly. Phones rang once, just once, and never again. Screens flickered static. And every clock, digital or analog, locked on 3:33. No one remembered waking. By sunrise, the coast was cordoned off. Emergency vehicles appeared without sirens. Uniformed figures who didn't wear badges knocked on Lonnie's door but never entered. One left a device in his mailbox, a black cylinder, humming faintly. Burke disappeared that night. His truck remained outside the old bait shop, driver's door wide open. His keys lay beside it. His bag of broken compasses was gone. Lonnie didn't need to ask where he went. He knew. What terrified him more was what Burke might have taken with him. Candace returned once, to warn him. "They're not interested in containing it," she said. "They're studying it. Mapping its movement. Like it's part of a system." Lonnie asked the question he hadn't dared speak until then. Was it alone? Candace didn't answer. She just handed him a printout, satellite images, grainy and dark. One showed a shape crawling into the surf near Oregon. Another, deep in a Louisiana bayou. Each time-stamped over the past 5 decades. One image stopped his breath, a coastal outline he recognized. His own county. Date stamped, August 1973. Deployment failed, he whispered. Candace nodded. But not forgotten. That night, Lonnie stood in his shed, staring at the place where the first box had sat. It was empty now. Hollow. And then he saw it. A shape beneath the tarp in the corner. A second box. He hadn't brought it here. He hadn't touched anything. Still, it waited for him. No hum. No glow. Just silence. He reached forward with trembling hands and lifted the edge of the tarp. The lid was sealed shut. But on its surface, etched deeply, with surgical precision, was his full name. Not scratched. Not written. Carved. His breath froze. The letters were flawless. Clean. As if etched decades ago and only now uncovered. There was no cassette. No tape. No instructions. This one didn't need to warn him. This one had waited. He backed away slowly. Closed the shed. Locked it. Double-chained the door. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window, shotgun across his lap, eyes on the shed. But nothing moved. Not until 3:33 a.m. Then, one soft knock at the door. Then another. Then silence. The second box had never been opened, yet it knew his name. Lonnie locked it away, but it never left. After Burke vanished, after the government trucks rolled out without answers, after the clocks resumed their ticking, Lonnie did what no one expected. He didn't destroy the second box. He didn't even bury it. He put it in a freezer. Bought a chest unit from a warehouse liquidation, hauled it into the basement, lined the inside with steel sheets and prayer cards. He slid the box in gently, like lowering a body into a coffin, and sealed the lid shut with 6 industrial locks. Then he left town. Didn't sell the trailer. Just walked away. Drove until the ocean was hours behind him. Settled inland, surrounded by trees and silence, the air crisp and unsalted. But it followed. Not the box, it. Every night for the first month, he dreamed the same dream. 3:33 a.m. 3 knocks. Always 3. His wife's voice from the hallway. Not calling, inviting. Lonnie, open it, baby. It's cold in here. He'd wake in a sweat, the room stinking of seawater, his hands damp as if pulled from a tide. Then came the seaweed. At first, just a strand beneath the doormat. Then a clump on the porch. Once, an entire slick mass slung over the birdbath, dripping, fresh, hours from any shore. Neighbors asked questions. Lonnie said nothing. He knew better than to speak its name. The freezer stayed shut. The locks held. But he still checked it, every night. Even knowing what he'd find. The box never moved. Never hummed. Never opened. It waited. Candace sent one final message, a photo. Satellite again. This time, inland Missouri. A black smudge against a stretch of farmland. The caption. Second wave? He didn't reply. Some things weren't meant to be understood. Whatever the box was, biological, alien, weapon, messenger, it didn't just arrive. It returned. Carried like driftwood. Left like bait. The warning wasn't on the tape. It was the box itself. And there were more. He saw it now. Each one like a key, waiting for the right hand to lift the velvet. Not just to open, but to recognize. Lonnie didn't move again. He didn't run. Instead, he waited. He grew old in that inland cabin. Stopped checking the news. Let the clock stay unplugged. But he always kept one thing near his bed. The tape player. It had stopped playing years ago. But some nights, just before sleep, the reels would turn once. Just once. And he'd hear her voice. It's cold in here. Then the knock. 3 raps. Slow. Deliberate. He never answered. He never spoke. And every morning, without fail, a small clump of seaweed waited beneath his window. Fresh. Damp. Salted with memory. Because the truth was simple. Some things don't stay buried. Some things get delivered, again and again. Would you have waited 50 years before lifting that velvet?